Good morning, everyone. I feel so blessed and honored, and thank Reverend Margaret for this opportunity to speak here today before you. And it's just wonderful being here each and every week, and especially today, looking out at all these beautiful, loving faces. Today's message is about letting go and answering the question, could it be this simple? But before getting to the what-fors of letting go and the how, let's see what this story that you may already be familiar with has to tell us. Once a man was being chased by a tiger. He was running as hard as he could. When he reached the edge of a cliff, the tiger was right behind him. So when he looked over the edge of the cliff and saw a branch that was growing out of the side of the cliff, only a few feet down, he jumped off and grabbed onto the branch. Just then, a mouse came out of a space near the branch and began chewing on the branch. Now the man was really scared as he looked at the 1,000-foot drop below him, where he would surely be dead if he fell from that height. And so he looked upward and yelled, "Dear God, please help me. Please save me. I will do anything you ask." A voice came booming from the sky. "Will you do anything I ask?" The man, terribly frightened, yelled back, "I will do anything. Please just save me." The voice replied, "There's only one way to save you, but it will take courage and faith. Can you do what I ask? Do you have faith?" The man replied, "Please, God, tell me what to do. Your will is my will." And the voice answered, "All right then, let go of the branch." After a long silence, the man looked down again at the 1,000-foot drop and certain death, and up at the tiger waiting for him, and he yelled, "Is there anyone else up there I can talk to?" This is a dramatic story about letting go, about courage, faith, and trust, and meaningful also when viewing it metaphorically from the standpoint of the value that lies in letting go of the things that do not serve us, of what letting go can do for us. And though letting go is not always easy, it can be. But more about that later. Letting go is part of the human struggle, or at least it can feel like a struggle. While being human is not limited to struggle, it's often accompanied by troubling questions like, why am I here? What is my purpose? If I am perfect, whole, and complete, why don't I feel worthy and deserving? Why do I compare myself to others more often than not, seeing myself as less than, as not good enough? Do these questions feel familiar? I know they are to me. This quote from a book called Praying God's Word by Beth Moore, that one of my sisters shared with me, speaks to this. We each have our unmet needs, and we carry them around all day long like an empty cup. In one way or another, we hold out that empty cup to the people in our lives and say, "Can someone please fill this? Even a tablespoon would help." Part of embracing our humanness means that we can get caught up in the messiness of being human, like we do when these questions overtake us or seem to define our existence. It's not a simple matter to let go. Part of the struggle lies in reconciling the human and the divine aspects of ourselves. We sometimes conceptualize them as mutually exclusive, but they are not. It is all God. We are both and we can choose peace or pain. We have come to this physical plane to heal our soul wounds, a healing process that can begin with the struggle that these questions cause us to deal with. Ours is the journey of the evolution of the soul, but this does not mean denying or expunging. Our wholeness is made up of all the parts of ourselves in our lives. When we seek the kind of healing, deepening, or expansion that we often talk about here at Joyful Gathering, this means first cultivating an awareness of what does not serve us, and then focusing our attention on elevating our consciousness. We are responsible for our own experience of life. Life does not happen to us unless we let it. How do we cultivate the kind of awareness that will help us identify the parts of ourselves that need tending to and then move on? Let's look at this from the viewpoint of what Dennis Merritt Jones talks about in his book, The Art of Uncertainty, where he wrote, "Even at a young age, we begin to develop our attachment to the known, which always circles us back to a reference point called the past. If we are honest with ourselves, We can see that for most of us, that this attachment to the known still finds a home in our adult consciousness or belief system. We all have some addiction to wanting to control the future, don't we? There is much comfort to be found in the confines of a box when we know where the edges are. But there is certainly no growth, no evolution, no deepening of our spiritual nature within that box. And while at the same time he concedes that it's flat out frightening to step into the unknown, or as I say today, to let go, he also tells us this is where all new creation takes place. What does letting go offer us? For one thing, it offers the same kinds of rewards that forgiveness offers. We're unburdened, released from the chains of the past, and this from Psychology Today. We relax into and pass through suffering into peace and possibility. Holding on to old identities which in the past may have served a purpose, but which we may now have outgrown. It is also important to understand that it is ours to discern the what and when of the letting go process, and that this process can be accompanied by strong feelings. And here, acceptance is deeply powerful. Avoiding the strong desire to change reality, accepting the world as it is, people as they are, and most important of all, accepting you as yourself. And like forgiveness, which is what we think we do for others, it's really about releasing ourselves from the prisons of our own making. It feels good to let go, not when people tell us to let go and move on, but when we ourselves are ready and when we see the necessity of it. And it's not about forgetting nor whitewashing another person's behavior. It's about protecting ourselves from the corrosive effects of staying stuck. I'd like you to do a simple exercise with me that's based on a mini version of what Byron Katie outlines in the method some of you know called the work. The work involves 4 questions, but today, for the sake of time, we're going to just focus on one. This is the 4th of those 4 questions. And this is a question we can ask ourselves when we do feel stuck or troubled. So right now, first, let's just take a breath together. And if you like, I invite you to close your eyes. Think of a scenario that is or was accompanied by strong emotions, or a thought that was troubling sometime recently or in the past. A driver cut you off. Your partner, your friend didn't respond the way you wanted them to. Your job isn't fulfilling. You've received a diagnosis that is frightening. What is the thought that comes up? Is it something like people should be more loving? My job, my partner, my friend should make me happy. My body, my life is against me. Take a moment to identify what this thought is for you. Now ask yourself this very powerful question. Who would you be without this thought? Who or what would you be without the thought? Picture yourself standing in the presence of the person or the situation from which the thought arose when they were doing what you think they shouldn't have been, or when life was not giving you what you wanted. And imagine who you would be if you actually really did not have the ability to think that thought. And now ask yourself, how would your life be different in the same situation without that thought? What do you see? What do you feel? Which do you prefer, with or without your story? Which feels more peaceful? In Katie's little book called The Work, she writes that some people say, I'd be free, I'd be peaceful, I'd be a more loving person. And she writes that without our stories, we can act clearly, intelligently, and fearlessly. We can become a friend or a listener. We are living happy lives. We have appreciation and gratitude. And she says, we already have everything we need right here, right now. We all make assumptions about and judge both ourselves and others, and as a result, most of us have baggage we're carrying around. And when we're weighed down by the stories that we self-identify with, by those untrue stories that we adopt, by the soul wounds that we've come into this life with, there are parts of us that are denied, parts that are unable to express or embrace the fullness of life, the joy of living that we have come here to experience and to be. It may behoove us in the process of discerning what is ours to hold on to and what is ours to let go of, to ask the question, does my story, whatever that is in any given moment, represent a prison of my own making? Or is it something higher calling out to me to pay attention? In the words of the American mythologist Joseph Campbell, we must be willing to let go of life, the life we planned, so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Katie's book, called Loving What Is, begins with the premise that we cannot change what is, so why not make peace with it? The choice, again, here being ours for peace or pain. And though, as Martha Creek says, it does not always feel possible to love what is, think about it this way. Try moving from loving what is not always possible to accepting what is also sometimes not possible, to allowing. As we allow, we cultivate the ability to detach from our stories. And detaching from our stories is powerful in moving us forward. I once thought that I needed to eradicate or fix the parts of myself or my life that I found undesirable, but today, I find that it's more often valuable to allow things, to observe, not just to allow things, to observe and embrace them as the teachers they can become. As we say, it's all God. All the parts of me are God. I am perfect, whole, and complete, just as I am today, and just as you are too. Here at Joyful Gathering, we seek to understand life together. I'm referring to life with the lowercase and the uppercase L. And what it means when we say that we are divine beings having a human experience. This experience of the journey that is ever asking us to do more, be more, deepen, expand, and so forth involves a very real understanding of what it means when we talk about the concept of wholeness as embracing all of life and all of the parts of ourselves. The drive to do, to be, and to know more is what Ernest Holmes calls the inner urge to push out, the divine urge. Whatever we face, we already possess that which we need. It is already within us. And herein lies my message today, the key to letting go. It can really be as simple or as difficult as we make it for ourselves. Dennis Merritt Jones also tells this story in his book about a sparrow family that came to live on a ledge on the underside of his patio awning outside of his kitchen window. In the spring, the mother laid 4 eggs, and it was sacred to watch the babies grow. Finally, the day came that they would be forced to leave the comfort and safety of the nest they had outgrown. It was time for them to launch and take to the sky. The largest of the chicks stepped out of the nest and onto the ledge for the first time, looking down at the ground some 8 feet below. He stood perfectly still as if sizing things up and began to experiment with the awkward appendages we call wings, stretching and flapping them wildly. He waddled several feet back and forth, trying to decide whether he wanted to return to the nest or take the pending plunge. And then quickly, he came to the edge, flapping his little wings, intentionally leaning over until he reached the point of no return, and he simply surrendered to the pull of gravity. He instantly began to fly around under the patio awning, slowly widening his loop to extend to the grove behind the house. The second and third chicks did the same thing and followed, but the fourth chick, the run of the bunch, was a different story. And he walked to the edge. Excuse me. Excuse me 1 second. I have to go to my backup plan here. Which is the...
We're left at the edge.
You're left at the edge. You are left at the edge.
Make it off.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yes, you would be good at that. All right, he stood there at the edge of the nest for a good 10 minutes, trying to muster up his courage. But hearing the festive chirping of his siblings, he finally bounced up, came running to the edge, and without even looking down, he leaned over to the point where he had no choice. It was either fly or fall, and naturally, he flew. He did bump into a few windows and walls before he made it out from under the awning, but then He and his siblings flew several victory laps around the garden, and they were off to explore the world unknown to them. As Merritt Jones says, our consciousness is the filter through which the unlimited potential of the universe flows. It determines the size of the box we live in, and if we want to create a larger life, I say a freer, more peaceful, more loving life, we must expand the size of the box. That is, to come to the edge and lean over. We too can follow the chick's example when we know this. There is that within us which already knows, and this allows us, as we always say here at Joyful Gathering, to know that all's in divine right order, that all is well all of the time, that it is all God, it is all good, and we are exactly where we need to be at any given point of time in our lives. Very simply, to let go. Sometime after receiving my diagnosis of MS and RSD in 2003, I was treating for these through Western medicine practices using various medications. And fairly early on after the diagnosis, I decided that my pathway forward was through looking into holistic ways of treating for these diseases. I looked into and followed several alternatives. I did craniosacral therapy, followed the methods of direct MS, which involved dietary changes and lots of supplements. I was meditating, continued to do so. I was looking at how my thinking connected to the manifestation of those diseases through Louise Hay's work. And I kept coming back to Ayurveda, which my daughter had been studying and teaching me about. So a few years into the search, having tried some of these other things that didn't quite ring true, I attended a lecture that a well-known Ayurvedic physician was giving in Haddonfield. She was speaking specifically that day about the treatment of multiple sclerosis through the practice of Ayurveda. And as I listened to her speak, I knew. I simply knew without a doubt that this was for me, that this was right for me. And I also knew that it would involve a financial commitment and lifestyle changes that I wasn't yet ready for. At the same time, however, there was that within me which also knew that I would follow this path when the time was right, and that I would know when that time had come. There was no doubt in my mind. I cannot describe this in any other way except to say that I had a very clear knowing. I did not feel any angst or worry about the whens or hows, and a year later, I knew the time had come, and I began seeing this physician and following her teachings. And without having been conscious of it at the time even, because I hadn't yet to come to science of mind, I was following the inner knowing that I'm talking about today. This was an inner knowing that I recognized, and its call, one that I followed. That has led me to now being exacerbation-free and virtually symptom-free for over 20 years. Some would call this a miracle, and it can be viewed that way. But it can also simply be known as spirit, or the divine intelligence that is within us, all of us, that is in us and through us, that is us. All of us have had these kinds of experience of knowing in our lives, and there are times for all of us still when we don't hear or heed the calls, when we're not listening or paying attention to the knowing that we sense, and even when we do, we don't always follow it, do we? We hesitate, we doubt, we don't trust ourselves, but it doesn't change the fact that we already possess it, the knowledge and the wisdom necessary for any situation. The solutions to our questions or fears, the powers of discernment, the courage, they spring forth from an infinite source, a great wellspring, a wellspring that is unfailing, deep, and infinite. This knowing may not always be as strong or as clear as it was for me that day, at that time in my life, but that does not change the fact that we are all already connected to this wellspring all of the time. When we're unsure of this, though, knowing how to deal with life can be as simple as saying to ourselves, there is that within me which knows, and I encourage you to affirm this often. We are like the little sparrows. We grumble and grouse and flap our wings, often returning to the nest, feeling defeated, sometimes even before we give life a chance. But when we understand that we already do know exactly what it is we need, Metaphorically speaking, we can fly. Like the sparrows, we are meant to. Our bodies already know this. Our bodies that are always functioning to restore all of our internal systems to their original set point, which is perfection and health and well-being. Our bodies that are one with the harmony and the order of the universe, no matter whether we're nourishing or nurturing them with positive foods and thoughts or not. The knowledge, the understanding, compassion, or courage, whatever we are seeking at any given moment is intrinsic. It is already within us. It is already there all of the time. And we can choose easily and confidently to let go of the branch, swinging over the edge, to take the kinds of leaps that are being called forth from us. Sometimes we will fly, sometimes we will fall, but it is all for us. Call it what you will, inner voice, intuition, the God spark, the Holy Spirit. Rely on your heart center, where the wisdom lies, instead of your head center. And this awareness goes beyond faith, where we move from knowing to embodying. When we let go of the branch and know that the wisdom we seek is already within us, that wisdom automatically makes itself known to us. I'm talking about the consciousness that we are that presence that we always refer to, because we are pure consciousness. Understanding this is the basis of understanding science of mind from the metaphysical standpoint. We are pure consciousness. Questioning, doubting, and sometimes struggling, allowing all the parts of ourselves and all of life's experience, moves us from becoming to being. And this is what I mean when I say that life is a journey of the evolution of the soul. We are ever being asked to move forward from becoming to being. Today's message is a simple one, something that you already know. Our spiritual evolution takes place largely as a result of becoming aware of and releasing false beliefs. The presence never forsakes us, because it is as much a part of us as our very breath is. It is us. And so, my friends, let this be the reminder today. I am, you are, exactly, already that which you seek to be. And there is that within you which knows. And it really can be this simple. And thank you so much, and so it is.
Beautiful.